So here's a quick overview of some of the things you need to think about as you're getting the images together for your video. It's all about the pixels. So the main thing, of course, you need to find good images in terms of the content, so images that show what you want to show. That's not something that we're going to discuss right here. What we are going to talk about is, on the technical side of things, how to get the best quality images that you can, starting with how you acquire them, in other words, getting them in the first place, and then going on to what you do with them in Photoshop to get them ready to put into your video. So this first piece is going to be talking about acquiring the images. Probably 4 ways that you could do this. There may be more, but these are all the ones that I could think of. You can get images from the web. Now, when you download an image from the web, depending on the situation, you may have some control over the size and the resolution. In a lot of cases, you have no control. It is what it is when you download it. If you use a site like Flickr, you can choose from several options of image sizes, and long story short, always choose the largest one. If you're using a digital camera and taking pictures, you may be able to control the size of those images. Many cameras have quality settings, and I would suggest what you do is go into your settings on the camera and choose the highest quality that's available. My camera, and we can look at something I shot here, when I take a picture set at highest quality, if we look at Photoshop and go to image size, you can see it's giving me an image that's 3,648 pixels wide, 2,736 pixels high. This is really great because what that means is I can crop into that picture, focusing in on a small area, and I've got enough information, enough pixels there, that I can do a very tight crop and still have a good quality image. And by good quality image, let's look at our third piece. The magic number is 720 by 534 pixels. So what you want to have is an image that you'll import into the video that's sized at 720 by 534. So your original should be at least 720 by 534 to start with, and preferably larger, in fact preferably much larger, because what that means is that if it's a larger image, more pixels to start with, you can crop it to get exactly what you want and still have plenty of quality in terms of the adequate number of pixels. What you don't want to do is start with an image that's, say, 360 pixels wide and then in effect enlarge it to 720. Sometimes you have to do that, and if you have to do that, in the other part of this tutorial where I talk about using Photoshop, I'll show you the best way to do that. But ideally, start with a much larger image and then crop it to a smaller size. With this, of course, you have to make this change before you start taking the pictures. Once the pictures have been shot, they are what they are, and you can't change that. But if you are going to be taking pictures in the future, be sure to set that to be the highest quality that you can get. If you have a real high quality digital SLR, you may not want to go with highest quality, but I would say about 3,000 pixels wide would be a good size to start with. Alright, what about if you're going to scan images? Alright, in this case you control the size and the resolution. And if you know much about scanning, you actually could figure out exactly the resolution you need based on the size of the original and the size that you want to end up with. And we know we want to end up with 720 by 534 pixels. And in fact, even at that, I'd want to aim for something a little bit larger to give us the option of cropping it if it's not exactly what we want. Now, if you're not really that good with the math, here's a really crude but I'd say fairly usable cheat sheet in terms of setting your scanner resolution. I'm holding a regular piece of paper. It's 8.5 by 11 inches. If that were the size of the image I was scanning, and I was going to use, so the image is this big, and I was going to use the whole image. In other words, I didn't really want to crop into a little piece of it. I wanted to use the full image. I could scan that image at 72 pixels per inch, and that would give me good quality, at least 720 pixels wide, in the final scan. If I want to use a smaller piece of that image, in other words I want to crop into it, or if it's a smaller image to start with, about the size of a snapshot, about 6 by 4 inches, set the scanner resolution to 200 pixels per inch, or something close to that if you have some options, but approximately 200 pixels per inch. If I want to use a very small portion of a big image, or if I want to start with a small image like this one, say it's about the size of 2 postage stamps side by side, set the scanner to 400 pixels per inch, maybe even 600 pixels per inch. Depends on the options you have, but I would say at least 400 pixels per inch will give you a scan that has at least 720 pixels in it when you're finished. Alright, so that would be our scans. And then the fourth possibility is you might create art on the computer. If you're using Photoshop or Illustrator, you control the size and the resolution. So I would work in a size that's at least 720 by 534. And in fact, you could just set your image size at that, and that would give you then, when you save it out, exactly the size you need for the video. Now let's look at if you're getting videos, or I'm sorry, if you're getting still images from the web. Here I am at the Flickr site. I'm using a sequence of photos that someone set up, a little story about Hello Kitty. So there's Hello Kitty strapped into the car. And notice that I have several options, quite a few options in this case, of the size image to use. Pick the largest one in most cases. In fact, if you've got the option of going larger than this, I would even go larger. But in this case, the largest image is 1024 by 768. That's the one I'm going to download. So I hit download. And here's the last thing that we're going to talk about right now, which is when you're either downloading images, scanning images, creating images, what you want to do is name them and organize them in such a way that you can find them when you need them. So I'm calling my project Hello Kitty, and I've set up a folder, and inside that folder I've got two other folders. One called Originals, which is where I'm going to put all of my originals, like this one I'm downloading right now, and another folder where I'm going to put the cropped ones, in other words after I crop them to size, and that's what we're going to talk about in the next tutorial. So right now we're just saving originals. In my story, this particular image is the 5th frame of a 5-frame story. So I'm going to call it Hello Kitty 5 and put it in the originals folder. You can see I've already done this before, and you can see that I've got Hello Kitty 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 SM, and 5. We'll get to this in the other tutorial, but what this is a smaller version of that Hello Kitty image that I'm going to use for the demo. But the ones that we really want to use are Hello Kitty 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. If you've done your storyboard, you should have a pretty good sense of the sequence that you're going to use and possibly sections. You may have your story divided into sections, in which case you might want to set up titles that reflect where in the story they are. So perhaps beginning 1, beginning 2, beginning 3, middle 1, middle 2, middle 3, end 1, end 2, end 3. Or depending on how you've got your story organized and thought out, you may name them in other ways. But the important thing is to name all the files in some sort of consistent way that you can find what you need when you need it, and you have some sense of what it is without having to open every single file and look at it and study it to figure out what it is. So I'm going to cancel this for now. And that pretty well covers what we need to talk about right now, which is where to get images from and how to get them. Last thing, let me go back to the web for 1 second, which is if you're not using Flickr, you're just using a regular website like this one, Hello Kitty Hell. You would not believe some of the Hello Kitty stuff you can get, which is why somebody set up a blog called Hello Kitty Hell, which is actually pretty interesting. You could be the next person to do something like this. Let's say we wanted to use this image of Hello Kitty cigarettes. The way you can grab it, which you probably know, is you can right click on it, copy image, and let's not do that. Let's do save image. We don't want to copy it. Save image as. And in this case, it's already called Hello Kitty. I'm going to actually change the name a little bit. Excuse me. And I'm going to reflect the way I've been naming things. I'll just save this as Hello Kitty Cigarettes JPEG. Hit save, and there you go. So again, to save it, I'm going to right click on it, save image, and then name it following my naming system as opposed to whatever it was named by the person who created the site. Alright, so that gives us our miscellaneous ways of getting images. And the next thing we're going to do in the next tutorial is open images in Photoshop, and I'll show you a quick way to crop them to size and talk about how you might want to save them in terms of format, and maybe a couple of other issues related to Photoshop.